Okay, this is 250, week 7, part 3. Dante is such a big fucking deal that he changed everything we know, um, or we think we know anyway. Um, Before Dante, people spoke about a mouth of hell, the mouth of hell. After Dante, the gates of hell. Dante was the first person in the Bible. Hell is just like a big pit where people go and burn in punishment. But in Dante, hell has levels. There's like sections, and different sinners go to different levels. There's like a guy in a boat who takes people around, and it's like a public transit system in hell. Um, he changes. And in hell he puts like people he knew in Italy that he didn't like, and then like mythological people like Hercules. And he talks to them, and he hangs out with them, and he travels around hell, and then he goes to heaven and purgatory. And anyway, it's supposed to all be true. He changed because when people think about hell as having sections or gates or doors, any kind of structure, basically in the Bible, hell is just like a pit. It's just a big fucking dark pit of flames. And in Dante, it's like a city. Now, religious people might tell you that Dante got that information from God, and it's true. But the rest of us, I'm going to tell you, Dante invented that, and he did such a good job inventing it. Everybody fucking believes it. And people will tell me, "Oh, that's in the Bible," and I'm like, "That's not in the fucking Bible. Read that book." Oh man, big bugs. Okay, so Dante. All right, so I've mentioned Homer and Virgil and Dante. I could go on. The book that I was reading when I went to pick up salad is by a guy named Edmund Spencer. And Spencer wrote a giant book. It's a 1,000-page poem about knights in shining armor fighting dragons and monsters. And it is supposed to, like, each knight has, like, a different good thing you could learn from them. Like bravery and, temperance and chastity and whatever. And the idea is when you read the book, you learn from each knight and you become a better Christian. So that's a 1,000-page poem about that. Anyway, those are some of the most famous poets. Oh, and then Milton. John Milton, who's a little bit after Shakespeare. John Milton writes a poem called Paradise Lost, which is about Satan falling from heaven and fighting against God and seducing Eve into eating the apple and causing the fall of all mankind. And again, there's a bunch of stuff that people think they know about Satan, and I mentioned this weeks ago. But there's a bunch of stuff people think they know about Satan, and they're like, "Oh, that's in the Bible." Oh, and I talked about this already, but right, describe Satan. He's got bat wings and a pitchfork, and he's got hooves and a goatee, and he sits on a throne in hell. None of that's in the Bible. It's in John Milton. Milton put that in his book, but it's not in the Bible. Milton made it up. And Milton would tell you that he got it directly from God, and it's true, but I don't know. Okay, good luck. So the point is that these were the poems before Wordsworth arrived. Homer, writing about the war that founded his country. Virgil, writing about the war and monsters, etc., and gods that founded the country. Dante, writing about the whole structure of the afterlife. Spencer, writing this massive poem about knights and dragons and teaching people how to be better Christians. And then Milton, writing about the fall of Satan and the creation of the fucking universe. And that's what poems were like before Wordsworth. Now, there were love poems also, but the really big famous poems, the ones that people really gave a shit about, were those kinds of poems. These big, fuck off, massive, important poems. Okay. I should probably show you a Wordsworth poem now to demonstrate how Wordsworth changed everything. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pick somebody who was close to Wordsworth, somebody that he was sort of in his circle, somebody that he kind of knew as an example of it. So let me go pull up for you really quick. You're going to have to just be over here for a second. Look at the fucking trees while I change the poem. Also, I don't have a printer because I don't have a fucking printer. So I wrote it by hand, which means my handwriting is real messy. But I'm getting a poem out for you guys right now, and then we're gonna look at this poem. Okay, so let's take a look at, and this guy is named John Clare, and he wrote a poem called The Mouse's Nest. And The Mouse's Nest, we're back. Okay, so he wrote a poem called The Mouse's Nest. The Mouse's Nest is a poem by a guy who is thinking along the same, it's just just think about it like it's the same thing Wordsworth is doing. He's a different guy, but he's doing the same kind of thing Wordsworth is doing. He's influenced by Wordsworth. So let's take a look at John Clare's Mouse's poem, A Mouse's Nest. It's a pretty short poem, and you're going to have to read my terrible handwriting, but here's the poem. You ready? Okay, John Clare, The Mouse's Nest. I found a ball of grass among the hay, and progged it, meaning he poked it, and progged it as I passed and went away. And when I looked, I fancied, meaning I imagined, I fancied something stirred, and turned again, and hoped to catch the bird, when out an old mouse bolted in the wheat, with all her young ones hanging at her teats, and the little baby mice are on the mama mouse's breasts. She looked so odd and so grotesque, like weird and strange and freaky to me. um, I ran and wondered what the thing could be, and pushed the knapweed bunches where I stood, right, the plants. When the mouse hurried from the crawling brood, the young ones squeaked, and when I went away, she found her nest again among the hay. The water, or, meaning over, the water or the pebbles scarce could run, and broad old cesspools, meaning like puddles, glittered in the sun. I'm going to read it again because I gave you some vocabulary words in there so you could follow it. There's a couple of weird ones, right? Prog means poked, and grotesque is like weird and bizarre. And the mouse has the baby mice at her teats, at her breasts. The mouse has the little baby mice hanging on. He thinks it's a bird, and it turns out to be a mouse with babies. And cesspools are like puddles, or means over. All right, let's try it again. I found a ball of grass among the... Anyway, I'm giving this to you an example. This is an example of the kind of thing that Wordsworth created with his idea. This is a poet who lived in the same time and place that Wordsworth did. I found a ball of grass among the hay, and progged it as I passed and went away. And when I looked, I fancied something stirred, and turned again, and hoped to catch the bird, when out an old mouse bolted in the wheat, with all her young ones hanging at her teats. Well, she looked so odd and so grotesque to me, I ran and wondered what the thing could be, and pushed the knapweed bunches where I stood. When the mouse hurried from the crawling brood, the young ones squeaked, and when I went away, she found her nest again among the hay. The water o'er the pebbles scarce could run, and broad old cesspools glittered in the sun. I don't know if you can see right now how fucking crazy people thought that poem was. Okay, what's the poem about? That's a good English teacher question. Class, what's the poem about? What is the poem about? Well, it's pretty simple. John Clare is walking around, and he hears something rustling in the bushes, and he figures it's a bird. He wants to see it, because he likes birds. I don't know. So he moves the bushes around, and suddenly this mouse, it's not a bird, it's a mouse, and the mouse comes shooting out of the bushes. And it's not just a regular mouse, it's a mama mouse with like a bunch of baby mice attached to her breasts as she runs. So it looks really weird because it's like a bunch of little mice attached to a bigger mice all running away because she's trying to feed her babies and hide. And he doesn't understand what it is at first. And then he's like, oh, I see, it's a mouse. It's a mama mouse with baby mice attached. And then she runs away. And then the poem ends with, the water o'er the pebbles scarce could run, and broad old cesspools glittered in the sun. Meaning that, over here, so that he tells the story. I thought it was a bird, turns out to be a mouse. It looked really weird. I realized it was a mouse with a lot of baby mice attached, and it ran and hid. And over there were puddles, and not very thick puddles, just like a little bit of water was kind of going over the rocks. But it created some puddles, and the sun glittered off the puddles. End of poem. This is the kind of poetry that Wordsworth invented. And this is the kind of poetry that is still with us today. It is hard to understand how shocking this poem was to people, and this kind of poem was, but it blew people's fucking minds. Why? Because people thought for thousands of years that the point of poetry was to talk about big, cosmic, and historical truth. The structure of the afterlife, Satan, the creation of the universe, the founding of the empire, and the gods and wars that created civilization. And Wordsworth said, I think poems ought to be about regular people doing regular shit. And John Clare read that, and he was like, oh, I can do that. And he wrote a poem. What's his poem about? Well, it's not about war, and it's not about the founding of a nation, and it's not about the structure of the afterlife. It's about one time he saw something moved in the bushes, and he thought it was a bird, but it wasn't. It was a mouse, and it was really weird because she had little baby mice on her breasts, and then she hid. Also, there was little water over the pebbles. Bye! That's the poem. Crazy. See you in the next video.